I need to start by saying that mental health awareness in schools isn't just important, it's absolutely critical. What I'm about to share with you changed my entire perspective on how we treat people who are different from us. Back when I was a junior in high school, there was this kid named Marcus who sat in the back corner of our chemistry class. Marcus was the definition of an outsider. He wore the same dark hoodie practically every single day, kept his head down in the hallways, and ate lunch alone in the library. The popular crowd made him their personal punching bag. They'd knock his books out of his hands, mock the way he talked, and post cruel things about him online. It was relentless. I'm not proud to admit that I never intervened. I told myself it wasn't my business, that getting involved would only make me a target too. But looking back, my silence made me just as guilty as the bullies themselves. One afternoon during study hall, I noticed Marcus sitting by himself near the windows. For some reason that day, maybe out of guilt or just basic human decency, I decided to sit down next to him. He looked surprised, almost suspicious, like he was waiting for the punchline of a joke. We started talking about the chemistry homework, then somehow got on to the topic of video games and old sci-fi movies. For about 20 minutes, I saw a completely different person. Marcus was actually funny and articulate when he wasn't being tormented. He had opinions and interests just like everyone else. Then I asked him the question that changed everything. Hey man, how are you holding up with all the garbage people put you through? His expression shifted. The light in his eyes dimmed, and he got this distant look on his face. I'm done with all of them, he said quietly. Every single one who made my life miserable is going to regret it. I tried to laugh it off, thinking he was just venting, but then he leaned in closer. You've been decent to me today. You want to know something? You're the only person I'd warn. My stomach dropped. Warn about what? Marcus glanced around the study hall, then slowly unzipped his backpack, just a few inches. Inside, I caught a glimpse of something metallic and unmistakable. My blood turned to ice. I've been planning this for weeks, he whispered. Tomorrow morning, during first period, I'm going to make sure everyone remembers my name. He zipped the bag back up and looked at me with completely dead eyes. You seem like a good person. Just don't come to school tomorrow. Tell your family you're sick or something. The bell rang, and Marcus got up and walked away like we'd just been discussing the weather. I sat there frozen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to believe it was some kind of twisted joke, but everything about his demeanor told me he was serious. I didn't even make it to my next class. I went straight to the principal's office, barely able to get the words out. Within minutes, the entire administrative team was involved. They pulled Marcus out of class, and that's when all hell broke loose. The lockdown alarm started blaring. Students were screaming and running in every direction, trying to get to the nearest classroom. I watched from the office as police cars surrounded the building, officers in tactical gear rushing inside. The whole school was on lockdown for nearly 4 hours. They found Marcus hiding in the boys' bathroom on the second floor. In his locker, they discovered detailed plans, a list of names, and yes, the weapon I'd seen. According to the police report later, he'd been ready to act the very next day, exactly like he'd told me. Marcus was arrested on the spot. I never saw him again after that day. He was expelled, charged as an adult, and sent away. The school brought in counselors, held assemblies about threat awareness, and installed metal detectors at every entrance. But here's what keeps me up at night. I saved lives that day, and I don't regret reporting what I saw. But I also wonder if things could have been different if anyone, had shown Marcus kindness earlier. If the bullying had been taken seriously before it pushed him to that breaking point. Years later, I still think about Marcus. I wonder where he is now, what happened to him after he got out. And I live with this gnawing fear that one day, He'll remember that I was the one who turned him in, that he'll come looking for revenge. This happened because a student at Lakewood High School allegedly showed another student a firearm in his backpack and made direct threats about using it. The school resource officer was immediately notified. The suspect fled the building but was later apprehended at his home. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded, and a nearby elementary school was also placed on lockdown as a precaution. Charges were filed, though specific details remain sealed due to the age of those involved. What I'm about to tell you happened during my senior year, and it's the reason I still have nightmares about staying late at school. I was on the wrestling team, and our practices ran until around 6 in the evening. By the time we finished, the building was basically empty except for a few teachers grading papers and the custodial staff. Most of my teammates had cars or could catch rides, but I was stuck waiting for my dad to pick me up after he got off work, which usually meant hanging around for an extra 30 or 40 minutes. On this particular Thursday, practice had been brutal. Coach made us run drills until everyone was completely gassed. I showered, changed, and headed to the main lobby to wait. But the front doors were already locked for the evening, so I went to the side entrance near the gym that stayed open for after-hours activities. I was sitting on a bench scrolling through my phone when I heard someone banging on the door, not knocking politely, but actually pounding on the metal like they were trying to break through. I looked up and saw a man standing outside. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a gray hoodie with the hood pulled up. Something about the situation felt wrong immediately. He didn't look like a parent or a teacher. "Hey, can you let me in?" he shouted through the glass. "I'm here to pick up my kid." I hesitated. I think you need to go around to the front entrance." I called back. "That's locked, man. Come on, just open the door. My son's waiting for me in the weight room." I should have trusted my instincts. I should have walked away right then and there. But the guy sounded frustrated and tired, and I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. I walked over and pushed the door open. "Thanks," he muttered, brushing past me without making eye contact. He walked quickly toward the interior of the school, not toward the weight room like he'd said. That's when the alarm started blaring. "Lockdown. Lockdown. All students and staff, secure your locations immediately." My heart exploded in my chest. I heard screaming from somewhere deep in the building. I ran back toward the gym and killed the lights in the lobby area. There was no door to lock, nowhere to hide except the equipment closage or the locker room. I sprinted into the boys' locker room and found an empty locker, squeezing myself inside and pulling the door shut as quietly as possible. The screaming got louder. Then I heard heavy footsteps running into the locker room. I pressed my eye against the vent slots in the metal door, trying to see who it was. At first, I thought it might be another student hiding, but then I heard breathing, panicked and rapid, coming from a locker 2 rows over. Then the footsteps came back. This time, I knew exactly who it was. The man I'd let inside was now wearing a ski mask, and he was carrying a long-bladed knife, the kind you'd use for hunting. There was blood on the blade, dark and dripping onto the tile floor. He stood in the center of the locker room, breathing heavily. Then he started screaming and slashing at random lockers, the metal shrieking as the blade tore through it. I held my breath, pressing myself as far back into the locker as I could. He was getting closer. I could hear him moving between the rows. Then I made a mistake. I shifted my weight slightly, and the locker made the smallest creak. He stopped, turned, and looked directly at my locker. I watched through the slits as he walked up slowly, tilting his head like a predator studying prey. Then he leaned in close, and I could see his eyes through the mask, wild and unfocused. "I know you're in there," he hissed. "Come out, and I'll make it quick." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I held the door handle from the inside with every ounce of strength I had. He raised a knife and brought it down hard against the locker door. The blade punched through, missing my face by inches. I could see the metal glinting in the dim light as he struggled to pull it free. "You're dead!" he screamed, wrenching the knife out and preparing to strike again. That's when I heard them, the sirens, distant at first, then getting rapidly closer. Police, ambulances, the whole emergency response descending on the school. The man heard them too. He yanked the knife free, looked toward the exit, and bolted out the same door I'd stupidly opened for him. I stayed frozen in that locker, too terrified to move. A few seconds later, I heard another locker door bang open, and someone stumbled out and ran toward the main building. I caught a glimpse of them, another student, blood soaked through their shirt. When the police finally swept through and found me, I could barely speak. I told them everything. The man I'd let in, what he'd said, what he looked like. But despite the investigation, they never identified him. The other student who'd been attacked survived, but couldn't provide any useful information. Security footage showed the suspect fleeing through the athletic fields, but he was never caught. To this day, I'm haunted by the guilt. If I hadn't opened that door, maybe the attack never would have happened. Maybe that other kid wouldn't have been hurt. I replay that moment over and over, wishing I'd made a different choice. And I'm terrified that the man is still out there somewhere, and that he remembers the person who let him inside. This incident was based on a disturbing lockdown event where a masked individual was spotted with a large blade near a Toronto school. Multiple people were injured, and police conducted an extensive search of the area. The suspect was described as wearing dark clothing and a mask, and was last seen fleeing on foot. Despite the investigation, the person was never apprehended. This happened just last year, right after we got back from spring break. Everyone was dragging. Nobody wanted to be there, and I was feeling especially miserable because I'd spent the entire break eating nothing but pizza and junk food. I have 7 classes a day, and by the time 4th period rolled around after lunch, my stomach was in absolute revolt. I raised my hand and asked my teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, if I could use the restroom. She gave me the pass, and I headed downstairs to the first floor bathroom because it's always less crowded and, let's be honest, better for situations where you need privacy. I rushed into the stall, barely making it in time. Without getting too graphic, let's just say I was in there for a while, completely miserable. While I was sitting there waiting for the worst to pass, I noticed something scratched into the stall door. Someone had carved a message into the paint. Don't come to school on March 24th. My blood went cold. With everything that had been happening at schools across the country, threats like this couldn't be ignored. The date was 2 days away, Wednesday. I finished up quickly and checked the other stalls to see if there was more graffiti, but that was the only message. I figured the janitor would find it eventually, but it bothered me enough that I kept thinking about it all through my next class. The following day, during 6th period, my stomach issues came back with a vengeance. I had to excuse myself again, and I went straight down to the same bathroom. When I got there, I noticed a threatening message had been cleaned off, probably scrubbed away by maintenance overnight. I went into the handicapped stall this time. Since it was bigger, I locked the door, sat down, and was about to take care of business when suddenly the lights shut off. The bathroom went pitch black. My heart started pounding. I heard the door open and footsteps echoed across the tile floor. Slow, deliberate steps. I stayed completely silent, holding my breath. Whoever it was went into the stall where the original message had been. I heard the sound of a marker cap being removed, then the squeak of someone writing on the wall. After about 30 seconds, the writing stopped. The footsteps headed back toward the door, and then they were gone. I waited a few seconds, then used my phone flashlight to finish up instead of going back to class right away. I went to check what had been written. My hands were shaking as I pushed open the stall door. The message was fresh, written in thick black marker. I am going to shoot up the school tomorrow. I stood there staring at it, my mind racing. This wasn't just some random graffiti anymore. This was an active, specific threat. Someone had just been in here with me, writing this while I was trapped in the next stall. I didn't even think about it. I went straight to the front office and reported what I'd seen. The administrators took it seriously immediately. Within minutes, the lockdown alarm was activated. I sat in the office, freaking out while police flooded the building. They searched every classroom, every bathroom, every closet. The lockdown lasted for over 3 hours. They interviewed me multiple times, asking for every detail I could remember. Did I hear anything distinctive about the footsteps? Did I smell cologne or perfume? Did I hear any voices? I had nothing useful to give them. Whoever had written the threat had been completely silent except for the sound of the marker. Eventually, they declared the school safe and lifted the lockdown. Parents were notified, and the next day, Wednesday, March 24th, the day mentioned in the original threat, there were police stationed at every entrance. 9 units swept the building twice before students were even allowed inside. Nothing happened. No attack, no incident. But they never found out who wrote the messages either. To this day, I have no idea if I actually prevented something terrible or if it was all just some sick joke by someone trying to cause panic. Maybe my stomach problems that day saved lives. Or maybe I overreacted and caused unnecessary chaos. But here's what really haunts me. That person was in the bathroom with me in the dark. They were close enough that I could hear them breathing. They wrote that threat knowing someone was in the next stall, and they didn't care. I still think about who it might have been. Was it someone I knew? Someone I passed in the hallways every day? And if the threat was real, did reporting it stop them, or did it just delay their plans? I'll never know, and that uncertainty is something I have to live with, based on actual events where bathroom threats led to school lockdowns, including incidents where messages warned students not to attend on specific dates. In one case, graffiti reading, "Do not come to school on March 23rd, was found, followed by a second related threat days later. Despite investigations, the individuals responsible were never identified, leaving communities shaken and schools implementing additional security measures.